You're still special to me, just not a priority right now, she admitted honestly. I accepted that and reorganized my life accordingly. Now that she's no longer my focus, she can't understand why she doesn't have the same access anymore. You're still special to me, she said. Just not a priority right now. I heard every single word. I nodded like it made sense. But what she didn't realize, what she couldn't have possibly understood in that moment, was that she had just handed me the most honest roadmap I'd ever been given. And I used it. I didn't realize it then, but that moment changed everything. There was a version of me that would have begged, would have said, no, I can work with that. Tell me what you need. I'll adjust. Would have shrunk myself into whatever shape she had room for. That version of me had spent 11 months doing exactly that, rearranging his calendar, his energy, his emotional capacity, all for a woman who had just, very calmly, told me where I ranked. Not in anger, not in cruelty, just honestly. And I think that's what made it land the way it did. She wasn't being mean. She genuinely believed she was being kind. We'd been together since the previous October. If you enjoy real stories like this, subscribe, because what happened next changed everything for me. I was 29, she was 27. Her name was Claire. We met through a mutual friend at a birthday dinner, started texting that same night, and within 3 weeks we were spending every weekend together. It felt fast, but it felt right. At least to me. The first 6 months were good. Not perfect, but genuinely good. She was sharp, funny, had this specific kind of confidence that wasn't loud, but just settled in every room she entered. I admired her a lot, honestly. She was building something, her own interior design consultancy, still in the early stages, unpredictable income, long hours, high stress. I respected the grind. I tried to support it. I'd pick up groceries when she was slammed. I'd clear my Saturday when she needed to decompress. I'd absorb the stress she'd carry home and just hold space for it. I thought that's what you did for someone you cared about. I thought that's what she was doing for me too. I was wrong about one of those things. The shift happened around month 7. It wasn't a big dramatic fight. It was smaller than that, which made it harder to name. She started canceling plans. Not all of them. Just enough to make me feel the difference. A Tuesday dinner. I'm exhausted, can we rain check? A Friday plan. Something came up with a client. A birthday thing I'd planned 3 weeks in advance. I completely forgot I told my friend I'd help her move this weekend. I'm so sorry. I didn't make a scene about any of it. I told myself she was busy. I told myself the business was stressful. I told myself that people go through seasons, and this was hers, and I should be patient. I was patient. For 4 more months. Here's what I didn't say out loud during those 4 months. The thing I kept almost saying, and then swallowing. I started to notice a pattern. She was busy for me, but she wasn't busy in general. Her Instagram stories showed brunches I hadn't been invited to. Her weekends were blocked for me, but apparently not for the friend group that seemed to expand every time I looked. She had energy for things, just not always for me. And when she did show up, really show up, it was so good that I convinced myself I'd imagined the distance. That's the specific kind of confusion that makes you stay longer than you should. The inconsistency isn't neglect. It's just selective presence. And you keep waiting for the version of her that showed up sometimes to become the version that showed up always. I brought it up in month 9. Not dramatically. I sat across from her at her kitchen table after dinner, and I just said it plainly. I feel like we're not as present with each other as we used to be. I miss you. I want more of your actual time, not just proximity. She didn't get defensive. That surprised me. She got quiet. And then she said something that sounded like an answer, but wasn't one. I know. I've been stretched really thin. I just need a little more time to get through this phase of the business, and then I promise things will balance out. I believed her. Month 10, month 11, nothing balanced out. The conversation that changed everything happened on a Sunday afternoon. We were sitting on her couch. She had her legs tucked under her, facing me, but not quite looking at me, and there was something careful in how she was holding herself. I'd felt this specific kind of careful before in past relationships, and it never meant anything good. She said, I want to talk to you about something. I said, okay. I don't want to hurt you, she started. And I want to be honest with you because I think you deserve that. She paused. You're still special to me. Another pause. Just not a priority right now. Silence. The business needs everything I have. I don't have the bandwidth to be the girlfriend you deserve. But I don't want to lose you either. I thought if we just kept going, you'd understand the season I'm in. I looked at her for a long moment. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't argue. I didn't ask, what does that even mean? the way part of me wanted to. I just said, "Thank you for being honest." She looked almost relieved, like the hard part was over, like I'd accepted the terms. And I had, just not the way she thought. I drove home that night, and I didn't turn on music. I just drove, and I thought, not about what she said, specifically, more about the architecture of what she described. She wanted me available. She wanted me in the picture. She wanted the option of me. But she didn't want the responsibility of me. She'd told me, out loud, in plain language, that I was a nice thing to have, not a necessary thing. And here's what I understood in that drive home that I hadn't understood before. She wasn't wrong for feeling that. People feel what they feel. The problem was that I had been operating as though I was a priority. I'd been showing up with that energy, that investment, that availability, while she was showing up with, by her own admission, whatever was left over. And I had been calling that a relationship. I didn't call her that night. I slept a full 8 hours for the first time in months, which told me something. The next morning I made a decision. Not a dramatic one, not a revenge one, just a quiet, logical, almost boring one. I was going to take her at her word. She said I wasn't a priority, so I was going to reorganize accordingly. Not to punish her, not to make a point, just to stop lying to myself about what I was investing in. The first thing I did was stop clearing my calendar for her. This sounds small. It was not small. For almost a year, I had operated on a kind of unofficial standby mode, keeping my weekends loosely free in case she was available, declining things with friends because I might be with Claire, not signing up for the Thursday evening gym class I actually wanted to take because she sometimes wanted to call at 8. I signed up for the class. I called my friends and stopped being the guy who was always maybe coming. I started being the guy who confirmed. The second thing I did was stop being the first one to reach out. This wasn't a game. It was just an experiment. I wanted to see what the relationship actually looked like if I stopped being the engine of it. If I stopped initiating texts, stopped suggesting plans, stopped filling the silence. I wanted to see the shape of what was left if I removed my effort. The first week, she texted twice. Casual things. How's your week going? Saw something that reminded me of that restaurant we went to. I responded warmly, but I didn't extend it into plans. I didn't jump. The second week, one text. The third week, nothing. And there it was, the actual shape of things. Meanwhile, my life was getting quietly better in ways I hadn't expected. The Thursday gym class had turned into something I genuinely looked forward to. I'd had 3 dinners with friends I'd been loosely canceling on for months. I picked up a project at work I'd been putting off because it required evening time. I started waking up without that particular low-level dread I hadn't even fully named, the one that comes from quietly knowing you're not as valued as you're investing. It wasn't happiness exactly. It was more like relief. Like pressure I didn't know I was carrying had just stopped. Here's where it gets interesting. Around week 4, Claire texted something different. I feel like you've been distant. Is everything okay? I read it 3 times. I set the phone down. I picked it up again. Distant. I had not changed how I spoke to her when she reached out. I was still warm, still present in conversation. I had simply stopped being the one to initiate. I had simply stopped making myself available before she expressed interest. The distance she was feeling wasn't coldness. It was the absence of my excess effort. And apparently, she had come to depend on that excess without ever valuing it. I responded, I'm okay. Just been busy with some things. How are you? Warm. Normal. Honest. She said she was fine, but that I seemed different. I said, I've just been focusing on my own stuff. She said, oh, okay. I get that. But she didn't get that. Not yet. The next Sunday, she asked if I wanted to come over. And here's the thing. A month ago, I would have rearranged whatever I had to make that happen. I had something with friends that evening. Nothing grand. Just dinner. I said, I have plans tonight actually. Maybe next weekend. Silence for a few minutes. Then, you have plans. The tone in those 3 words. The surprise in them. Like she'd just discovered water could run uphill. Yeah, dinner with some people. Enjoy your Sunday though. She said, okay. And that was the end of the conversation. But I could feel something had shifted in how she was reading me. 3 days later she called. Not texted. Called. That was new. I picked up. Her voice was different. Not upset, exactly, but alert. The way someone sounds when they're suddenly paying attention. I've been thinking, she started. I feel like there's been some distance between us, and I want to understand it. I don't think there's been distance, I said. I've just been living my life. Right, but... She paused. It feels different. Like you're not as available. And there was that word. Available. I took a breath. I heard what you said a few weeks ago. About priorities. I took that seriously. What do you mean you took it seriously? I mean, I reorganized. I've been putting more energy into my own things. I'm not on standby in the same way. Quiet. I didn't mean for you to pull back, she said. I know, I said. But I didn't have another option. Why not? Because I can't keep showing up at the level I was showing up while you're operating from a different investment level. That's not sustainable for me. Another quiet. I didn't realize you were going to just change like this. And I almost said I didn't change. But that felt like too much explaining. So I just said, I just stopped pretending the situation was something it wasn't. She wanted to meet in person. I agreed. We met at a coffee place near her studio. She looked, honestly, a little thrown. Not sad in the dramatic movie way. More like someone who'd gone to reach for something that was always in a specific drawer and found it wasn't there. She said, I don't want to lose you. I said, you told me I wasn't a priority. That doesn't mean I don't care about you. I know that, I said. And I don't doubt that you care. But caring about someone and prioritizing them are different things. You were honest about where I stood. I just started living in that truth instead of pretending it wasn't real. It feels like you're punishing me. That word. I sat with it for a second. I'm not punishing you. I haven't been cold. I haven't been cruel. I've just stopped over-investing in a situation where my investment wasn't matched. That's not punishment. That's just balance. She didn't have an immediate response to that. She turned her coffee cup slowly. So what does this mean for us? I think it means we're at the actual level we were always at. You just didn't notice before because I was compensating for the gap. She looked up. That's a really hard thing to hear. I know, I said. But you were honest with me. I'm just being honest back. Here's what I hadn't told her yet. The thing that was sitting in the back of the conversation, not spoken. Over the past 4 weeks, I had also started spending time with someone. Nothing serious. Nothing intentional. Just a woman from the gym class, Sophie, who was funny and easy to talk to and who, crucially, seemed genuinely interested in what I was saying when I was saying it. Nothing had happened. But the contrast was startling. Not because Sophie was better. I didn't know Sophie well enough to make that comparison. It was startling because I'd forgotten that being with someone could feel effortless. That you could talk to a person and they'd ask a follow-up question because they actually wanted to know. That you could suggest something and the response could be yes instead of, let me check my week. I didn't tell Claire any of that. It wasn't relevant to what we were discussing, but it had clarified something for me. I hadn't been missing Claire, exactly. I'd been missing the feeling I thought we had, and had quietly started doubting we ever fully did. The coffee ended without a resolution. She said she needed to think. I said that was fair. I drove home and realized I felt nothing that resembled anxiety about the outcome. That was new. A year ago, 6 months ago, the thought of Claire needing to think about us would have sent me into a low hum of worry that would follow me for days. I'd have been checking my phone, rehearsing conversations, adjusting my behavior preemptively. Now I just drove home, made dinner, watched something, slept. She texted 2 days later. I've been thinking a lot. I think I took you for granted. And I think I told myself that being honest about my limits was enough, that as long as I was upfront, you'd just adjust and everything would be fine. I didn't think about what that actually meant for you. I read it twice. I appreciate you saying that. I responded. I want to do better. I want to actually show up. Can we try again? Differently this time. And here's where the story doesn't go the way you might expect. I didn't have a cold response ready. I didn't have a prepared speech. I just sat with the question honestly. Did I want to try again? I thought about the 11 months. The canceled plans. The Sunday afternoons I spent half present because she was tired or distracted. The way I'd slowly outsourced my own social life to exist in her orbit. I thought about the last 4 weeks. The gym class. The dinners. The project at work. The full nights of sleep. The absence of that low-level dread. I thought about what trying again differently would actually require. Not from her. From me. Because here's the part that took me a while to understand. It wasn't just that she had deprioritized me. It was that I had let the deprioritization run for months while calling it patience. It was that I had organized my life around her availability instead of my own actual wants. It was that I had treated a half-present relationship like a full one and then felt confused by the results. That was on me, not on her. She had been honest, eventually. I had been dishonest, with myself, for much longer. I responded the next morning. I think you're a genuinely good person, and I don't think you did any of this maliciously. But I've spent the last few weeks building something that actually fits my life instead of one that accommodates someone else's. I don't think I want to dismantle that for an attempt at something we already tried and already showed us what it was. She replied, I understand. Then, I'm sorry it took me this long to see it clearly. Me too. I sent back. Take care of yourself. And that was it. No dramatic ending. No door slam. No final confrontation. Just a conversation that ended the way it should have ended months earlier, if I'd trusted what I was seeing instead of waiting for something that wasn't coming. There's something specific I want to say here about the whole "you're still special to me" part, because I've thought about it a lot. She meant it. I genuinely believe she meant it. She wasn't manipulating me when she said it. She wasn't trying to keep me on the hook while she looked for something better. She just had two things that felt true to her simultaneously: that she cared about me, and that I wasn't where she was putting her energy. And she said both things out loud because she thought honesty was the same as respect. But here's what she missed. Honesty about your limitations doesn't obligate the other person to accept those limitations indefinitely. You can tell someone exactly where you stand, and they can hear you exactly, and then choose to stand somewhere else. That's not punishment. That's just people making decisions with accurate information. She gave me accurate information. I made a decision. The decision inconvenienced her. That's not the same as the decision being wrong. Sophie and I ended up getting coffee a few weeks after the whole thing concluded. She asked why I seemed different from the first few weeks of class. Lighter, she said. You seem lighter. I laughed. Probably because I am. I didn't explain the whole thing. Didn't need to. We talked for 3 hours. She asked follow-up questions. I asked follow-up questions. Nobody checked their phone. No plan got canceled. I drove home and thought, oh, this is what it's supposed to feel like. Not perfect. Not without complexity. Just mutual. Just present. Just both people actually there. I saw Claire once more, about 2 months after the coffee shop conversation. Mutual friends, birthday dinner, same kind of thing where we met. She looked well. We were cordial. Briefly warm, even. She was with someone. I didn't ask, didn't need to know the story. I introduced Sophie, who I'd actually started seeing properly by that point. Claire shook her hand and smiled, and said something gracious. And there was this moment, just a flicker, where we made eye contact across the table, and I saw something in her face. Not regret, exactly. Recognition. Like she was seeing for the first time what she'd had available to her. And I felt nothing complex about it. No satisfaction. No grief. No I told you so. Just the clean, quiet feeling of something that had run its course actually being over. Here's what I know now that I didn't know then. When someone tells you where you rank, believe them. Not to punish them. Not to run away. Not to teach them a lesson. Just because the information is useful. You get to decide, with accurate information, what you want to build. A lot of people, I was one of them, take "you're not a priority" and here "try harder," when sometimes it just means reorder accordingly. That's not a betrayal. That's just clarity. And once you act on clarity, the whole world reorganizes. The people who were always willing to be present suddenly have room. The energy you were pouring into a gap gets reclaimed. You start sleeping full nights. You start confirming plans instead of hovering on maybe. You stop waiting for the version of someone who shows up sometimes. I'm not special for figuring this out. It's not complicated. It's just harder when you're in it. When you care about someone, their honest admission of your diminished rank feels like something to solve. Like if you're patient enough, or understanding enough, or quietly excellent enough, the rank will change. But that's not how ranks work. People prioritize what they prioritize. Not because of your worth. Not because of your effort. Just because of what they actually want. And when someone tells you what they want, even gently, even kindly, the honest thing to do is believe them. She said I was special, just not a priority. So I found people for whom I was. That's the whole story. And it turned out the whole story was enough.